this quaint habit of people working, and what little extra money they had, they'd put away into a bank, and they'd open a savings account, and they get interest on the money that they put in there that was above the inflation rate. And, again, when I was a kid, they used to have all these ads. Eastern Airlines, of course, they're gone. Come on down, go to Florida. And all the retirees started going down there. People could actually retire on what they saved. And that concept is long gone. And when you really see the beginning of the death of it has been going on for quite some time, but it really became very apparent after 9/11. And people forget that prior to 9/11, just months before, Bush was elected in November of 2000, the country was in a severe recession. The dot-com bubble had burst in March of 2000. He was really disliked. And then 9/11 came. And what happened? They told everyone, go out and spend money. They lowered interest rates to 46-year lows. That's what created the housing bubble, all of these other bubbles that went along with it. The nation was in a recession. And then, of course, when they began to raise interest rates later on in the 2000s, 2005, 2006, you started seeing the results happen immediately with the housing bubble bursting. The only thing that has kept this so-called recovery alive is the trillions, that's right, trillions of dollars of worthless money that the Federal Reserve has been dumping into the system, and record low interest rates, near zero interest rates. And when interest rates go up, the economy goes down. So what else they have done by lowering interest rates and people putting money in the banks and getting basically zero back is they're forcing them to gamble in the equity markets. So again, it's an interest rate recovery. It cannot go on forever. The only reason these emerging markets emerged at the levels that they have is because of all the hot money flowing into them, because U.S. interest rates were so cheap. They could get all the money they wanted, brought it home, got a higher interest rate on it, and then started another bubble. And now, of course, interest rates are going up, and the emerging market bubble is popped.
It's frightening. We have allowed men on Wall Street with the puppets in D.C. to basically have boom-bust scenarios as far as the eye can see. And I'm starting to wonder if just people are so whiplashed and so afraid, they're just willing to believe anything a talking head tells them.
It's not only in that, it's in every field. The United States is talking now about attacking Syria. And I watched yesterday 3 painful hours of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearings. It was a freak show. And I'm saying to myself, how can any self-respecting adult believe these jerks? So what's going on with the rest of the people? All right. Again, I remember, growing up, in college, they had this song, I take the 8:19 into the city and I get to work by 9. Nobody takes the 8:15 into the city anymore. They're on the road at 5:15. They're getting home at 7, 8 o'clock at night. Those are the people that have jobs. The other ones in Slavelandia are working in these terrible joints called Target and Macy's, Walmart's, the whole deal. So people have no lot. They have no money. Again, I'm old enough to remember this quaint little thing they used to have, pharmacists. That's right, the people that grew up in the community or moved into the community, opened up the drugstores, they're gone. The people that had hardware stores. There was O'Reilly's stationery store down the block. It's a multinational takeover, and it's global. So people have nothing, and they've lost their minds. Look what they look like. Look what they're eating. Fast food? There's no such thing as fast food. It's crap food, and they look like crap. They think like crap. They drink crap. They have crappy jobs. They get crappy pay. They don't even know what's going on when it hits them in the face. I began the Trends Research Institute in 1980. As I keep, getting older, I keep looking back and, I'm not the same guy I was when I started. And I did a lot of work, and I believe that's what has to happen. And to me, it's when the individual changes, everything changes. When I wrote Trends 2000 back in 1995, if there was one mistake that I made, I was too optimistic. That whole New Age movement was starting to flourish, and people were really looking for the inner self to change the outer world. And then the dot-com boom started to happen. I watched it. My generation, the baby boom generation, became everything that they hated. They're the biggest hypocrites out there. And by the way, that greatest generation that Tom Brokaw writes about, that's a lot of BS as well. The greatest generation gave us Levittowns, suburbs, fast foods, and big agriculture, agribusiness. So yeah, they did some nice things. But guess what? They set the model for destruction. They're also the ones, and again, how could it happen on a practical level? No matter what country you're in, no matter what community you live in, and again, I want to preface this with the words taught to me by my dear father. May his soul rest in peace. Anytime I'd be shooting my mouth off, he'd look at me in an Italian, he'd say, "Papagallo, parrot, stop repeating what everybody else is saying and think for yourself." So what I have to say, this is only the way I see it. I'm not telling people how to think or what to believe, like these wanker politicians I watched yesterday for 3 hours. So to me, whatever country or community you live in, you have to build your own. So support each other. That means buying local. That means growing local. It means globalization has only helped the multinationals. Put in place those acts that were in place before that build your nations to the levels that they were. In America, we had, for instance, the Glass-Steagall Act. Actually, it began under Carter. He was the first deregulator of any major significance with the airlines and also banking. And then it accelerated under Reagan, Bush, and then Clinton put it into high gear. He deregulated not only the Glass-Steagall, the banking industry, acts that were put in place purposefully when the Great Depression was going on because of the destruction that the banks wrought with the crash of '29. And then you go back and look at all of the deregulations that happened. I was mentioning about why we used to have, entrepreneurs, stationery stores, haberdashers, dress shops, pharmacies, hardware stores, etc., is because laws were in place. The Clayton Antitrust Act, the Robinson-Patman Act, the Sherman Antitrust Act. Well, if you wanted to go into business, and let's say you wanted to sell silverware, and you went to the manufacturer of the silverware and glasses and things and said you wanted to buy 5 dozen of these, 8 dozen of those, or 12 dozen of this, he'd give you a price. And then Mr. Big walks in behind you. He said, "I want 100 dozen of these, 300 dozen of those, and 800 dozen of that." Who would get the best price today? Well, obviously Mr. Big. But not in the old days, not in America. It was a level playing field. Everyone got the same price. And that's why you had competition. That's why people, even the milkman, could buy a home and retire on the savings that he had. Those days are gone.